Welcome, everybody, to the Sentinels of Liberty podcast, where we always put liberty first and we're uncompromising on our principles here. I'm your host, Redbeard, and I really appreciate everybody stopping by this evening, coming to join me in the conversation about a variety of different topics here. And as much as I hate to say it, we're going to talk a little bit about Iran. I think it's kind of unavoidable at this point. But we're going to try and jump a little bit more into some domestic-oriented issues and kind of hit at things at home because, as essentially the title implies, Americans are facing a multi-front war, in my opinion. And so there's a lot of different things to go over today. But first and foremost, as much as I hate to even ask this, in order to kind of keep things going in a forward direction, if you would throw down a like, subscribe, if you share this, even throw some comments down below, whether you agree, whether you disagree, it's always greatly appreciated. And, I really appreciate everybody coming out and showing their support. So without further ado, let's kind of jump into it. I do have let's see here. I have an article that is pulled up. I'm going to bring it up here and hopefully. So this one is by DropSite News, and it basically talks about Iran blasts Trump's claims of direct talks as fake news aimed at manipulating markets. Now, this is kind of interesting. Hopefully I can. Yeah, I can. Okay. So what's kind of interesting is there's been a lot of conversations recently as it pertains to kind of what some people might be claiming is like some ill-gotten gains or in the very least, some pretty suspect increases of cash flow recently. There's people that have been talking about individuals close to the Trump administration, up to and including Barron, Trump's son, in the sudden spike of income that they happened to get in and around the Iran war. I believe Barron had kind of, cashed in, or he had kind of bought some stock with oil. I think it was like 3 days before. And, he, for whatever reason, I don't know, maybe he thought it was just a good time. But, when your dad's the president, there's always the little caveat that you might get a little bit of insider information. Once things kicked off, he managed to make, I think it was somewhere around it was somewhere between, I've seen conflicting numbers, between 140, 140 million, I think it was, to $200 million. It's quite a healthy sum. And there's a few other people who benefited pretty well also from that whole situation. But let's kind of dig into this here, into the article. By the way, this article, if I can do my job properly, is by Jeremy Scahill and Murtaza Hussein. Not very good with Middle Eastern names, so I do apologize for destroying that name. But anyways, on Monday, Iran forcefully denied claims by President Donald Trump that the U.S. and Iran are in the midst of negotiations to end the war, saying that no direct talks are occurring. Trump claimed on Monday via Truth Social that good and productive conversations had taken place with Iranian officials over the past 2 days, backtracking from his Saturday threat to destroy Iranian energy infrastructure if Iran did not open the Strait of Hormuz within 48 hours. Clearly, he did backtrack on that, obviously, and there's still this whole line that's taking place right now where you're having Trump that's just like, oh, it's the great, we're making great progress. It's huge deals, it's going to be one of the greatest things. And, and there's just people that are coming out left and right. And they're saying, yeah, except for the fact that this isn't happening. The Iranian government has said numerous times that it's not happening. So it really does make one wonder, is it likely a lie to try and potentially save some face? Is it one of those things to where possibly there is something happening and the Iranian government's trying not to play their hand? Now, I am of the opinion myself that I don't think the Iranian government's probably in the mood to be negotiating anything, given the unfortunate series of events that they've had with the last two negotiations. I probably wouldn't trust the U.S. government to negotiate in good faith either myself, but I will leave this article down below also after everything is uploaded, along with the other articles, so you guys can go and read some of this for yourselves. But the point is I think it's very interesting how you do have this conversation that's been pretty hot the last couple of days about the obvious benefiting that people have seen as it pertains to their pocketbooks, the revenue generation from stocks and the buying and the selling, and how a lot of people have alluded to the idea that, last week, Trump goes up and he does the Trump thing and he starts running his mouth, and, and you had people that were buying up, and then before you know it, nothing happens. And so now people, there's this buying and selling dichotomy, I should say, rather, to be more clear, to where it's just like he says one thing one day and then he says one thing another day. And then before you know, people are essentially benefiting from that financially. So it's not the first time I think we've ever seen anything like this. I do think it is somewhat ironic, ironic, I suppose, is the proper term. But how you had Republicans that were lambasting Democrats about the very thing. That clearly it seems like is potentially happening. And so it'll be interesting to see, I guess, where this all ends up. I'm not a financial wizard. This isn't my area of expertise, but it is one of those things that, look, if we have people that knowingly are benefiting based off of this type of thing, a lot of people are calling it market manipulation. And so it's something I think we ought to keep a pretty close eye on, because if that's the case, man, well, there's some questions that ought to be raised, and there should probably be some things that we should start looking into. But if you know anything about the U.S. federal government as it stands right now, the likelihood of anybody ever getting looked at or getting to the bottom of anything, I just don't think that's going to happen. But it was an interesting article. Like I said, I'll leave it down below. But what do you guys think? Do you think that there is a willful market manipulation? Do you think people are benefiting the way that many people have described? I know Daniel Davis had some people on his show, and then I had listened to a few other shows recently this week that had discussed this very topic. Now, I do think that, when it comes to how people earn money, typically I'm not the type of person to be like, oh, well, it is what it is. But when you have a clear conflict of interest, and it's something that overwhelmingly affects your position, there should be some questions raised there, but I digress. So very interesting situation there. I think it's very interesting also that you seemingly have Trump the past 3 weeks that just can't seem to get out of the stupor of perpetuating just a lie after lie after lie, saying that, the war has ended. We've completed the war. Iran has no, they have no assets anymore. They have no government anymore. Essentially, they have no air assets, Navy assets. They're out of ballistic missiles, but yet you continue to see barrages and bombardments from Ukraine on places like Israel and other places that have bases. And it really does make one wonder, why lie about it? What is the reason that you're trying to lie about it? And I think because it's a real blemish. It's a black mark on the administration. It's a black mark on the reputation of the United States. And we haven't even begun to touch on the fact that there's a lot of suspicion that come Friday, there's a pretty high probability that we may see boots on the ground. That seems to be what a lot of people are building up to. I tend to think that given the amount of assets that we're pushing into that region, we just called up the 82nd Airborne, and we're sending a bunch of those guys. I think it's a couple thousand of those guys over there, along with the two Mews from the Marine Corps. It's not looking very good. And if this does pop off the way that some people think it's going to pop off on Friday or in the near future, I think we can expect some prices to see a pretty sharp rise. I think this is going to be a drastic effect on the United States, as well as many other people around the world. I think we're going to see a pretty big global shift as it pertains to pricing, commodities, products, and all of these different things. So we're just going to have to buckle down and see. But I'm personally not super optimistic about this. I think this administration they feel like they're too far down this rabbit hole, and there's no turning back now. But my goodness, I hope I'm wrong. So with that being said, there is another article. Let's see here. So this is one that I'm gonna have to bring this up. I wish I was able to do this a little bit smoother, but if you guys would just stand by. I have an article that I thought was pretty interesting. And this one is pertaining to BlackRock. The BlackRock CEO does a U turn on the Iran war optimism. Now, this article in particular kind of piqued my interest because BlackRock is, well, they are some of the people of all time. They are definitely one of the corporations of all time, and they're not very well liked by a lot of people who I think hold a rather anti-war or liberty-oriented view. When you look at some of the ventures that they have gone on, the interests that they tend to take part in, and you look at a person like Larry Fink, well, I think a lot of people have right to be suspicious, but let's see what this article has to say. So just weeks earlier, Larry Fink expressed hope for a neutralized Iran. I wonder why. Framing the conflict as a good investment opportunity. Well, I guess based off of the recent article and the fact that people have been getting some pretty decent payouts as it pertains to oil, and somehow knowing, or at least having a really darn good idea of what the future is going to hold, I would say it's been a pretty decent investment for some people. There's definitely money being made by some, and there's definitely money exchanging hands between people. But let's see, is it all lost? Is it all something that is lost? BlackRock CEO Larry Fink has warned of an impending global recession if the U.S.-Israeli war on Iran drags on and oil prices remain above $100 a barrel. The stark prediction comes just weeks after Fink framed the conflict as a good long-term investment opportunity. What a freaking degenerate. Uh, in a wide in a wide-ranging interview with the BBC this week, Fink said that oil prices could stay above $100 per barrel for years if Iran remains a threat, potentially hitting $150 and sparking a probably stark and steep recession. Now, just real quick on that before we go a little bit further here, I have heard some people speculate that if it really starts to degrade and it starts to go downhill, that essentially there are predictions. Now they're just predictions that if it gets really bad, we could potentially get into the territory of 200 plus dollars for a barrel. So I think this is something we definitely have to pay attention to, because this is going to, whether people like it or not, to some degree, this is going to have some ramifications that I think we're going to see for quite a while. It's not one of these things I think that are just going to end up going away overnight. But let's continue here. However, earlier this month, Fink, whose company holds significant stakes in major U.S. defense contractors, gee, very interesting. I don't understand how he's not making money right now. But I digress. Struck a markedly different tone. During an appearance on Fox News, he dismissed the notion of prolonged war, predicting that oil would revert back to where it was and maybe even lower once the conflict ends. If the outcome of the war is a neutralized Iran and they are allowed to be selling oil products into the market again, there is great probability that oil is going to be below $50, he said, urging investors against pulling out of volatile markets, stating that he had been telling people to buy more and framing it as a good long-term opportunity. Obviously, you can kind of see the tone here. You can kind of see what the conversation is around. Dude, like this guy, let's be honest, this guy's making a killing right now. I guarantee you he is making money hand over fist. That money printer go burr. And, these defense contractors are just chomping at the bit to try and, start getting contracts to refill or resupplement the stockpiles that we have, the reserves, trying to buffer a lot of these things. Now, there is a caveat to this, though, as several people Oh, I didn't even put it up. So that was my bad. I had it set up, didn't even put it up. That's a me problem, not a you problem. It can't be perfect all the time. But this is this is essentially the article. I will have it down below. So can't win them all. Uh, so I think there's a really interesting situation here where let's see, where when we talk about reserves, okay, when we talk about what our stockpiles are, what it's doing, and essentially what we have going on here. The Libertarian Institute wrote an article on this, but I want to preface that we've had, there's several military experts or several foreign policy experts, whether it's people like Larry Johnson, Douglas McGregor, and many, many other people like John Mearsheimer. And the list is pretty decent. But a lot of these guys have been talking about for a very long time, even during the Ukraine war with Russia, as that's still going on right now, and the amount of resources and weapons and all of these different things that we have provided to Ukraine. They had said that the stockpiles were starting to get down there, and a lot of people were saying, no, it's not possible, it's not happening. But then you had, stories coming out from, artillery, artillery battalions and areas in the military that were having to give up their ammunition. They were having to give up a lot of resources in order to fund this conflict in Ukraine. And now we're getting to a point to where you're hearing the same thing again, but it's not the fact that we had replenished and these stockpiles had started getting low again. What it is it's a continuation of the draining on our stockpiles. And so when we go to look over here at the Libertarian Institute, and this article is by Jose Nino, Iran war has exposed America's strained military-industrial base. United States can conjure trillions of dollars. Let me see if I can go here. United States can conjure trillions of dollars from thin air through the magic of the Federal Reserve's printing press. What it cannot conjure into existence are missiles, interceptors, precision munitions that modern warfare devours at a pace Washington never prepared for. The Iran conflict has laid a bare truth that defense analysts have warned about for years. America's military-industrial base has atrophied into a hollow shell incapable of sustaining the imperial ambitions that politicians in both parties continue to pursue. And then if we go down here, I'll read one more line. Operation Epic Fury, or as some people like to dub it, Epstein's files, burned through roughly 3.7 billion in just the first 100 hours of combat, nearly $900 million per day. By day 6, the bill had climbed to $11.3 billion, the vast majority spent on munitions replacement that was never budgeted. These are not abstractions on a spreadsheet. They represent a physical reality that no amount of deficit spending can overcome. The factories capable of producing these weapons operate at a trickle compared to what the military demands. And then one more area just down here. Under Secretary of Defense for Acquisition and Sustainment, Michael Duffy acknowledged the depth of the problem at a March 4th, 2026 hearing before the House Armed Services Committee. Speed to scale, revitalizing the defense industrial base. We're just going to scroll down here just a little bit. And I'm going to highlight this here for you. Over the last 30 years, our defense industrial base has consolidated and atrophied. Skilled talent left the workforce. Excessive regulation pushed small businesses, startups, and private capital out of the defense business, and inconsistent demand signals discourage prime contractors from investing in production capacity. Now, this is something that I had talked about quite a while back, and I think what's interesting here is it really does exemplify a situation where several people had come out, again, not just Douglas McGregor, but people like Ted Postal and many, many others, John Mearsheimer, Larry Johnson, and they had talked about the fact that at the rate and drain that we're seeing in our own stockpiles, and the use of our munitions, the transferring them to places like Ukraine and Israel, is we're going to have a situation where it's going to take potentially 5 to 10 years to even get back to levels that would be considered nominal or normal for just general operational use. That is staggering. I've seen some people saying it's somewhere as low as like 2 to 3 years. But I think when you look at the general scope, and mind you, the 5 to 10 year prediction was just based off of the Russo-Ukraine war that's going on, but then also the operations with the Israelis in Gaza. I think it's definitely a lot closer to that when you look at how much has been expended. We just have seen the United States that started taking stuff from places like South Korea as it pertains to AD and interceptors and the ability to transfer these things over to places like Israel and some of the U.S. bases. We're also seeing conversations that are popping up talking about potentially pulling stuff from Ukraine. So when you start pulling stuff from other areas, what that technically, well, I shouldn't say what it technically implies. What it seems to imply to me is we don't have the stockpiles or the ability to replenish those stockpiles to justify a position that says, oh, we have infinite stores of ammunition, of arms, of all of these different things, infinite stores. And this is something that was proclaimed and alleged by Trump himself. I don't know who's telling him this from the Department of Defense, Department of War, inside the State Department. I don't know who's telling him this, but when you look at people that have laid out the numbers and they've explained this, and they've been explaining it since the start of well, not the start, but probably about the middle ground of the Russo-Ukrainian war. I think it's a very problematic picture that it's starting to paint. So, and this is something that I think is problematic for us because look, I mean, if we're just giving away all of this stuff and, or we're selling all of this stuff and we leave nothing for ourselves, then what do we have to actually defend our home with? I'm not talking about outward projected military operations. I'm talking about the defense of our home, of our country, of the place that fundamentally matters, which is here, the United States of America. This presents a very serious issue. And unfortunately, there's a lot of people that are very much invested in this idea that, the United States has this infinite stockpile of military weapons and all of this. But I mean, there's more and more people as it goes by the day that are coming out to refute this. And you've had the same consistent voices that are saying, look, we can't afford this. We cannot afford this. And we are going to essentially pull the rug out from under our own feet, giving these weapons away, getting involved in just endless wars. And we're going to have nothing in which we can reasonably defend our own homeland for. So this is something that I feel is really, really important and pertinent to keep an eye on. It's a very serious issue. Sean, Chuck, great to have you guys here. I did see Ground Fog that was also here as well. Great to have everybody stop in and check out the show tonight. So moving on, I think, let's see here. I can't believe I did can't believe I didn't even put up the one about BlackRock. I explained the article. I was sitting there explaining the freaking article, and man, call that a moment, if you will. So we're going to go on to the last one as it pertains to the Iran issue. Let's see here. Politics incentivizes. Sounds good, Sean. As always, I really appreciate you stopping in, brother. Thank you for the support. And yeah, I'm just trying to stay up on this as much as I can. It is hard because this stuff changes at the drop of a hat. So it's hard, but we're trying to do the best we can over here. Me, myself, and I. So the next article here is Politics Incentivizes Trump. This is another article by Joseph Solis Mullen from the Libertarian Institute, and we will see what he has to say here. So this first paragraph, I'll kind of go over. And again, for those of you who actually want to go through, read the rest of these articles, I'm kind of going over some of the basic points in the articles here, but I will have these articles down below. So Joseph Solis Mullen starts off by saying the early polling on President Donald Trump's war against Iran presents what might be at first glance look like a constraint on escalation. Across numerous polls, majority of Americans oppose the conflict with support for military action, rarely breaking out of the 30 to 40% range. Concerns about escalation, retaliation, in the absence of clear objectives are widespread. And yet none of this appears likely to meaningfully shape the administration's decision-making. Trump even said that himself. He doesn't care about the polls. The reason is simple. In the political economy of contemporary American governance, broad public opinion matters far less than the alignment of elite incentives and core partisan support. On both counts, the incentives tilt decisively away from peace, because peace doesn't net people like Larry Fink any money, right? So moving forward, start with the most important fact. Trump's support amongst Republicans remains not only intact, but overwhelming. The Quinnipiac poll from March 9th, 2026 shows Republicans backing for the war at an astonishing 85 to 11 margin. Even more telling, a slim majority of Republicans, 52%, indicate a willingness to support the introduction of ground troops. That figure should give pause to anyone hoping for a natural ceiling on escalation. The plain fact is that Republican voters who are going to support their guy, quote unquote, and across the aisle there are plenty of Democrats who will be reluctant to oppose him on the issue of war on Iran on behalf of Israel, which those are quite interesting figures, if I do say so myself. So we'll just do a couple more portions here just to kind of give you an introduction as to what he's talking about. The reality dwarfs the significance of broader public opposition. Yes, Americans overall are skeptical for outright hostile to the war. Economist slash YouGov finds just 33% support, with 56% opposed. Reuters Ipsos places approval even lower, around 27%. CNN, PBS, Marist, and NBC all report majority disapproval, often in the mid to high 50s. But these numbers do not meaningfully threaten Trump's position. His approval rating, hovering around 37%, has barely budged since before the conflict began. This is not an accident, and it reflects the decades of hardening partisan identities into something closer to political tribes, persuadable coalitions. And then so he essentially goes on to talk about the category of independence offers little correction. Political science has long demonstrated that the most self-identified independents are in practice reliable partisans. Their apparent volatility masks consistent underlying alignment. And you can kind of get a sense of where this is going. I think that when we look at this, that the support for this war is just, it's not there. But, you know, there is political incentives. And Trump, I think, is very much aligning with those political incentives as it is right now. You know, we see the relations that he has with Israel. We see the people that he deals with on a daily basis, as it pertains to people like Lindsey Graham and so many others. It's a very war hawk administration. I think there's deals that are definitely being made or being cut in order to continue this thing going forward. And I don't think the incentive to actually support the American people is there. I don't think he cares about the American people. Quite frankly, I think, if anything, it's not even America first. It's definitely America last. And we definitely have been coming up last here. Now, before I get too crazy into that point, one thing that I want to bring up is there seems to be this idea in my mind, and from kind of what I've seen, is that this is going to be big. It's going to be beneficial if we can just do this. If we could just get this war wrapped up, we're going to see just the greatest of things when it comes to relations with Iran. We're going to see the best prices ever. You've had just this ongoing, and I know that I've said this several times, but there is this self-filleting attitude to where everything is just perfect. Everything is, the best it's ever been, the golden era of America. And it really just seems that there's no sense of awareness that is occurring in this current moment. And I heard somebody kind of describe that, you have people that think that Trump doesn't have any agency at all. And then you have people that believe he does have some agency. I think it's somewhere in the middle. I think that there's a lot of manipulation going on, but I also think that Trump is going to do what makes Trump look good, and he's going to put himself in the best possible position. I think he's going to do stuff that's going to benefit himself, and I hate to be this way, but it's going to benefit his family and the people that he's close with. And that ain't us, despite what a lot of people might say, despite what a lot of people might think. I just don't see how we come out as the American people on top or benefit at all, not only just from this war, but we already hear mumblings and rumblings about going and starting something with Cuba now, which really would not surprise me. But, it becomes at this point at what juncture, and Greenland just came into the conversation once again, at what juncture do you step back and you're like, we actually can't sustain this. We can't afford to do this. This isn't something that's going to be feasible down the road. It really, really, really does become somewhat problematic. And man, I try to stay as optimistic as I can. I try to be a realist where, in many places I can. And the realistic, I think, point or perception that we're seeing right now is I think we're going to see escalation. I really do. I think we're going to see escalation. I think we're going to see, to some degree, some capacity of boots on the ground. And I would like to remind people that Israel, not that long ago, just started operations in Lebanon, and that they're not going to put a single. I would be shocked. Well, I'll put it this way. I would be shocked if we saw Israel commit any boots on the ground with Iran, but they sure as heck will do it in Lebanon. And I think it's because Israel that's a bite too big for them. They're more than happy to provide air support and a lot of other things, but man, it is not boding well. So there's a lot of big ifs. There's a lot of big questions, and none of it really seems to be squaring around all too well. So moving forward, the domestic side, we talked about essentially the one major front that we as Americans have to contend with, and that, quite frankly, is a terrible foreign policy that is going to affect, I think, a lot of pricing, a lot of different things that are going to come back and bite us in the behind. And but there's even more than that. There's more fronts. We have battles as it pertains to the Second Amendment. We see fronts as it pertains to free speech and the First Amendment issues. We have a variety of different issues as it pertains to, just the way that we're able to go through our daily life in terms of affordability and the ability to go buy a jug of orange juice, to go buy gas, to go buy basic necessities. I mean, these are all things that are not really being paid any real attention to. So we're having to try and figure this stuff out seemingly on our own. And to add insult to injury, I have several examples here for you. I have some notes written down, and you'll have to forgive me for looking down. I did not prepare quite as well as I had initially hoped, but we're going to make the dream work tonight. So, recent Minnesota bill HF 3407 with Senate companion SF 3661 would have gone beyond ordinary ghost gun regulation and specifically targeted possession and sale of ghost guns, limiting 3D printing of firearms to federally licensed manufacturers, banning distribution of 3D printer firearm design files, serialization requirements, and limits on assembling firearms without a license. This was something that was very much a problem that was being proposed as it pertains to the ability of people to build things on their own. That thing about life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness, that thing, a core fundamental pillar of our nation, the very principal foundation of who we are as a people. Yeah, that thing. Yeah, they don't like that. So they introduce things when they don't like conversations pertaining to firearms, when they don't like firearms, when they don't like something they don't fundamentally understand, and you get punished for it. And it goes beyond just a two-way situation. And let me explain that. But first, I want to give a little bit more preface. As of March 24th, 2026, the Minnesota bill failed to advance out of the House Public Safety, Finance, and Policy Committee on a 10-10 party line vote. So it was a real proposal, but at that point, it had not moved forward in committee. This is massive. That was only a couple days ago, right? So it didn't move forward in committee, but this is a problem because now they're trying to control. This is the fight that we face at home while they want to wage their wars and do all of their other ridiculous, degenerate garbage abroad. We don't escape it here, right? They're trying more and more every single day to try and control your ability to manufacture things. And it's not just firearms. It's not just firearms. It goes beyond firearms. But we're talking about basic things, like they say about assembling. So what does that mean? What does assembling mean? Most of these people have no fundamental idea what they mean by assembling, even though they're the ones that propose it. Does that mean cleaning a firearm? Because that was one thing that I had heard not long ago. I don't remember if it was in Minnesota or where it was, but the idea of being able to clean essentially your firearm would have been considered assembling a firearm. So what is that supposed to mean? The idea that they can come in and dictate to you what you can and cannot make, manufacture, produce, build, what you can do in your own home, on your own property. This is an egregious overstep, and this is not the only thing, okay? It does get worse here, but I mean, this is one of many things. And I have to bring this up. Normally I don't get to things right away, but Chuck is right here. If you don't know the story about a man named Dexter Taylor, boy, there is a lot to unpack here. Talk about a guy who freaking got absolutely just the rug pulled out from underneath him. They slapped this guy hard. This man, they went after him with everything in the kitchen sink. Basically, this, in the eyes of New York, this man is a blight to society, is a terrible person simply because of the fact that he had the ability to put firearms together, right? This guy was just doing his thing. He wasn't hurting anybody. He he had built ARs. He had gone through and he had done a bunch of other types of firearms, something that is well within our rights, well within our Second Amendment rights to do. But, I guess New York didn't like that. They slapped everything in the kitchen sink at this guy. And now he's, I believe he is actually sitting. I don't know if he's sitting in jail right now or if he went to prison, but man, they did this guy dirty. If you don't know the story about Dexter Taylor, I would highly encourage you guys go and check out the story of this guy. It is reprehensible, but these are the very things. They want to go after you for the most minuscule things. Oh, you can't clean your weapon. You can't put your weapon together. You can't do this. You can't do that. It's the tiny little things. And what this ultimately gets to, right, is it starts with firearms. They try to make this convincing point when it comes to firearms. They try to make this convincing point of, oh, you can't be trusted to do this, and you have to have licensing. You have to do this. You have to do that. So where does it stop? Because all of this stuff, some of the most potent stuff comes very subtly. They try and push it into different bills. They try and do an omnibus. They try and do all of these really sneaky, shady things. And how long is it before oh, well, you can't be trusted. You can't have this type of saw because we feel that if you have this type of saw, then you're up to no good because only a contractor should have this saw because the saw can cut metal. And if the saw can cut metal, then you could make X, Y, or Z. some type of harmful device, whatever the case is. So you can't have this saw. How long is it before they start to go after basic implements to where you have to be licensed just to fix your own car? How long is it before you have to get a license? You have to be licensed, bonded, and insured to fix your own house, right? Look, I know this sounds crazy to a lot of people, but it's not that far out of the realm of reality and the realm of potentiality, right? So they start with the firearms, they start with First Amendment rights, they erode those things, and then they try and find their inroads, and then they start going at basic things like being able to build things, being able to fix things, being able to maintain things by yourself. And it's absolutely reprehensible. There's state level efforts. It's not just in places like Minnesota or necessarily places like New York, where clearly they're going to throw you in the clink for just doing basic things that, person has the right to do. But you see things like in New Jersey. New Jersey won a federal appeals ruling in February 2026 tied to the crackdown on distribution of code for 3D printed guns. California obviously has major issues when it comes to this, filed a lawsuit in February 2026 against websites accused of distributing blueprints instructions for 3D printed, quote unquote, ghost guns, or things that they can control. So that terrifies them. So there's, let's see here. So there is an expansion here. 3D printed firearms, file sharing. Minnesota advanced a bill this session that would have restricted ghost guns, limited 3D printing of firearms to federally licensed manufacturers. Blah blah blah. Okay, so it is basically the same thing, but there's also something that I know is near and dear to a lot of people as it pertains to this. And that is raw milk. That is the ability to sell or produce raw milk or raw dairy. This is a long-running one, but it's still active now. The FDA states that interstate commerce in raw milk for human consumption is prohibited under federal authority, even though the interstate rules vary by state. In March 2026, the FDA and CDC were investigating a multi-state E. coli outbreak, I guess, apparently tied to a raw farm, raw cheddar, raw milk products, tied to raw farm, raw cheddar, and raw milk products. I apologize. That is not a new ban, but it is a current example of regulators scrutinizing and potentially constraining small scale or alternative food production outside of the mainstream pasteurized system. So look, this is a situation where, again, it's just more exerting of control. This is one of many battles that we face. It's one of many fronts of this war that we face on a daily basis as Americans. This idea that, we still have like this immense amount of liberty and rights and all of these things. Well, none of these things are kept if you're not exercising your liberty and your rights. Furthermore, there's when we look at Thomas Massie, his current farmer-focused bill that he has proposed, H.R. 7880, I believe it is, the Interstate Milk Freedom Act of 2026. He introduced the bill on March 9th, 2026, and it was referred to the House of Energy and Commerce Committee. The bill has 9 co-sponsors when text was posted publicly. Essentially, what does this do? So what it does is it would prohibit federal departments, agencies, and courts from interfering with the interstate transport of unpasteurized milk and milk products that are packaged for direct human consumption. Essentially, in a plain meaning of sorts, it is meant to stop the federal government from blocking raw milk sales across state lines where producers and consumers want those transactions to occur. Look, it's reinforcing that we have the right to sell stuff to each other. It's reinforcing the right of free trade and of free markets and the freedom of association, right? These are things that we should have. But you have a government that is hell-bent on waging this war against the American people to try and prohibit, restrict, regulate, to get into every single little facet of the public's ability to produce or manufacture or create or do stuff in their own homes and their own property or whatever the case is. They want to have a monopoly on this. They want to control all of it. They want to be able to create a dependency, right? They'll never say this out loud, but if you can control things like firearms, speech, basic products like milk products and many other products, and you start being able to control and put an iron grip on a lot of these different things, then it makes it much, much easier to create a dependency, to exert your will, and to be able to kind of push people in line. It's absolutely reprehensible. And it is one of the, I would say, one of the more imminent and serious fronts of this war upon our rights and our liberty that we face on a daily basis. So there's a number of different issues too that we want to, or that I would like to kind of discuss here briefly, which there are pushes to put in devices that will monitor driver behavior, monitor speed, and directly limit what the vehicle can do once it is installed. So there is the federal, let's see here. So some examples here is Virginia's Intelligent Speed Assistance Law. Essentially, Intelligent Speed Assistance Systems, ISA, these systems use tools such as GPS and speed limit data to help keep a vehicle from exceeding the posted limit. So they do not just track behavior, they can actively constrain driving speed once installed. Maryland, New York, California, they have similar things, right? So I'm not going to go through all of them, but this is the type of thing that they're wanting to do. This is what they want to put into your vehicles. And I understand that you're going to have people that say, well, you know, it could really cut down traffic crime, could really stop all the bad people from doing the bad things, when we know that that is an absolute falsehood. These types of things, if you're naive enough to believe that they're going to use this in any type of benevolent manner whatsoever, like, it doesn't simply track you. This thing has the ability to limit your speed, okay? Has the ability to limit the functions of your vehicle right off the line. And there's already some manufacturers, from what I've seen, and this could be wrong, but I have seen a couple blurbs already floating around in the media space, as it were, where there are vehicle manufacturers by, I believe, 2027 that are planning to have in their new production vehicles these types of devices, and devices that would ultimately be more of a control mechanism in the way that you drive, the way that you use the vehicle, etc. It's more and more a war on the American people every single day. So it's bad enough that we have these situations where we are being taxed to death to fight these wars, these illegitimate, unconstitutional wars, to go fight and die for another country, sending our people in harm's way for another country, right? Or sending our stockpiles to other countries and our treasure to other countries to support their militaries. And the hit that it produces on our economy. But now we also have to face this, a different type of warfare here at home. And so you have, it leaves people with the question of where is the imminent danger? Where is the potential imminent threat? I'm here to tell you, it's not the Iranians that are taking your liberty. It's not the Russians that are taking your liberty. It's not the Chinese that are taking your liberty and your rights. Now, they might, all of these places, maybe they have people on the inside, much like Israel and much like Ukraine. But I'm here to tell you, in the end of the day, it's people within our own government that are selling you out. They're abusing and destroying your rights and your liberties. They're the ones that are overtaxing you. They're the ones that are over-regulating you. They're the ones that control more and more facets of your everyday life and everything that you do. They are the ones that are going forth, and they're making profits off of people's sons and daughters who are dying in war, keeping this industrial giant, this military industrial giant, running every single day. And they want you to believe that the threat from abroad, the supposed threat from abroad, is the thing that's coming to, like a boogeyman in the night, that's going to take away your freedom, right? Or whatever stupid excuse it is. Or we have to, America's better if we liberate other people from their oppressors. But yet we sit in our own states, in our own country, with our own oppressors. We sit here with our own authoritarians. We sit here with our own despots. We sit here with our own tyrants that are doing more irreparable damage to the fabric of American society and to the foundation of our country than Iran, Russia, China, and any other potential boogeyman in the history of the United States has ever done. Flat out. These are the people that will burn you alive in places like Waco. They will show up and tell you how wrong you are in places like the Bundy Ranch. They will Ruby Ridge you. They will shoot you dead on the side of a road like they did Lavoy Finicum. The list is long. The list is bloody. And they don't care about you. They don't care about you. You are a number to these people. And they want you to send your sons and daughters into the gauntlet while they destroy everything that's great about this country, using these terms as of safety. We have to be safe about this. It's for your own good. We have to do it to better you. We need to control these things because bad people are out there. We can't let you manufacture things because you're not qualified to do it. Meanwhile, you have so much material at home that you can learn how to build your own sinks, to make your own plumbing systems, to be able to set up your own electrical systems, to be able to set up systems that allow you to be free and not dependent on the grid, and all of these different things. They hate these things. These people fundamentally hate these things because they take you away from their cusp of control. So I would make the argument that the war is not abroad. I would argue, if anything, they bring that type of war back home, and they certainly have in many, many ways. But right now, what we're facing in our own backyard, the vile, degenerate creatures that we have that are trying to sit here and tell you how terrible you are if you don't agree with this administration, if you don't agree with this president, if you don't go along with the pecking order, man, I'm here to tell you. And look, it goes beyond this, right? The other war that we're facing here, or another front to this war that we're facing here, they're still not producing what they're required to for the Epstein issue or the Epstein case. They're still not providing. You just had Joe Kent that was on, and he said, I believe it was on Sean Ryan's show, and he may have said this on different shows too, they tried to look in to the Charlie Kirk assassination, and they were told no. They were told no. So we're not getting the truth about Charlie Kirk. We're not getting the truth as it pertains to Epstein. Anything that does happen to come out is so freaking heavily redacted and shoved off to the side because we're not privy to that information, or it's too terrible. We have to spare you the details. Give me a break. You don't have to spare us the details, because I believe the reason they're not showing you a lot of the stuff, and look, the Crooks kid, right? Whatever happened to Crooks? Whatever happened to a bunch of these other people in these high-profile cases? You don't hear about it. And look, whether you agree with me or not, TPUSA has gone completely off the freaking rails. Okay, there is definitely something more at TPUSA than I think a lot of people are willing to even talk about. There's been a few people talking about it, but I would argue that there's some pretty shady stuff going on there. And when you look at the 180, when you look at how Charlie Kirk was on a lot of different issues and where he was just before he died, and you look at where TPUSA is now, and you look at a lot of the things that they've done, boy, that's damning. And then when you have the federal government, the FBI, you have, the guy, Joe Kent, who investigated and oversaw terrorism, right? The department that he was a part of that oversaw and evaluated, threats of terrorism and all of these different things, right? When they're cutting that guy out because he's starting to ask questions, what does that mean? What does that mean? And then you pile on top of all of that, all of the regulatory things. You have more. You have an increase in gun control. You've had increasing amounts of control as it pertains to your speech. You're not even being told the truth about Iran. You have a guy that pops on TV on a regular basis, the president of the United States, who is supposed to be the best. All of our representatives, they're supposed to be the best of us that we put forward. And he continuously is caught in lie after lie after lie. So we're fighting an informational war as much as we are fighting a regulatory war in a physical battle of sorts, because, it comes in so many different facets and so many different ways and means and modes that I think really what they're trying to do is they're trying to beat us all down, and they're trying to get us as demoralized as we possibly can be, in hopes that we're just going to fall in line with all this stuff. So, we're fighting, as Americans, we are fighting a multi-front war here. And I'm making the argument, as I've made several times, that it's not from abroad. It is not from abroad that is the largest or major concern, in my opinion, because when you look at all the things that they're doing here, notwithstanding the horrid foreign policy practices that we've had so far, man, if you're not starting to ask questions by this point, I don't know what to tell you. Like I said, the Crooks guy. The Charlie Kirk thing, that's been buried. We've heard nothing more about that. When we look at the whole Epstein thing and that whole apparatus, and just the only people that are constantly talking about it are the people that have been bringing this to the surface ever since it all started, right? But it's not the government, So in the very beginning, when I was talking about, these fat little payouts that started occurring in getting noticed and picked up by people at the beginning of the Iran war, and noticing these dips and dives that occurred when it came to what Trump would say on a Friday and then what he would say on a Monday. You think that any of these people are going to be investigated at all after they've made a freaking killing? Absolutely not. Not in my mind, because they're not even investigating things that should have been investigated. They just tell you to look the other way. They tell you just to don't pay any attention over here. It's not a big issue. Don't worry about it. Just trust the plan. That's the big thing. President Trump has your best interest at heart. This is the thing that they're saying. The administration, we would never lie to you. That's the vibe, that's the vibe, or that's the feeling that they're putting out, is like, we'd never lie to you, even though we've done it. First day we've all been here. The people are sick of it. And I really, really hope that there is a sense of perpetual shaming of these people during and after their time in the federal government and even in state governments. Let's not omit them. Dan Bongino, perfect example. There's a video floating around, or there's a couple of videos floating around where he showed up to an event, man, and people were right there. These people should not escape their shame. They should not escape in many ways the criminal things that they have done to the American people at all. Why do they get to go free when we would be jailed for so much less, for things that are not even an offense? So, we really have to start to figure out this type of or figure out this conversation, this situation. We've got to start pouring on more pressure as time goes on, which means letting your voices be heard, which means, getting together with good groups of people, getting together with like-minded people, getting involved and trying to do as much as we possibly can and not relenting. These people should not have a day where they can walk away and they feel comfortable. Not at all. So, man, there's so much going on. These are it's just a short list of things that I was able to kind of put together and try to bring to you guys tonight on Saturday at 1700 on Saturday. I'm going to have even more stuff for you guys and gals that I'll hopefully be able to present. But the list just continues to go on and on and on. And I would, as much as I hate to say it, fully expect more Iran war things and updates as it pertains to that. And I'm sure after this weekend, they're going to, whoever has invested money into this whole thing is going to be making a killing again. And we're going to be at the losing end of that. But man, it is just, it's bad. And I don't say that lightly because, I know over the years, a lot of people have looked at various administrations and they've said, man, this is the worst one. This one is the worst. It's the most horrid thing, but this one is, I think this one takes the cake. And I'm not saying that it's the worst one we'll ever experience, but so far I would say this one takes the cake because my goodness, man. I mean, I'm not convinced that we've gotten a single, I would say you'd be hard pressed to find a single realistic, truthful thing that didn't at least that wasn't a half truth. It's a lot. So we're going to go, I'm going to take some time, kind of go through some of the comments here, respond to some of the comments and see what we got going on. So let's see. I just got one that popped in here. Recently found you. You're on par with world events and how to address it in a patriotic way, along with taking care of you and your family. Thank you for what you are doing. Hey, I really appreciate you checking out the podcast. Always great to have somebody else come in and watch and support, and so it means a lot to me. I try to do the very best that I can to bring the best information, as truthful as I possibly can, sticking true to principles, to liberty, and the things that really I think are definitive of who we're supposed to be as Americans. I believe in a lot of the things that the founding fathers espoused, and I think that now more than ever we need to really kind of put rubber to the road. And if you support liberty, if you support trying to find the truth, then we got to kind of jump into the arena and get involved in the fray. So I really appreciate that. If you haven't seen some of the earlier or previous episodes, go back, check them out, and feel free to drop a comment in those too, because I definitely try and do my best to go back and respond to every comment that I can. Doesn't always happen, but I try. But thank you so much for the comment, and glad to have you here. So, and then another one. So, by the same person here. COVID was the weapon to disconnect us 100%. Yeah, no, COVID was a very, very successful thing that they did. And man, it is, they really did a banger on that one. Let's see here. By David, the greatest threat to each of us is our own government. I think that was something the founders fundamentally understood. They always knew the dangers that came from government, especially those that are unchecked. And, and there was an expectation that we were to be stewards of our country, of our state and of our government respectively. And, we, as hard as it is to say, we have very much, I won't say everything, but we have very much the government that we deserve at this moment. And I'm not saying it's all our fault, but we certainly have some culpability in the hand in where we are today, for sure. So great comment. let's see here. So David brings up another point. It won't be long before we told we can't grow our own food and raise our own cattle. I mean, if you look at what they tried to do in Minnesota, they wanted to ban wood stoves. You have places that tell you, you know, if you live in a city, you can't have a rooftop garden if you have a roof that is flat, like you have in some major cities. You know, they really, really want you to be um, they really want you to be dependable or dependent, and they really want you to not um, be self-sufficient. And so they're I think there's always going to be pushes like this, but we have to just kind of stay on top of it and really track them. So great comment there. Chuck, I already got his comment about Dexter Taylor. If you haven't, again, if you haven't checked out that case, dude, it's insanity. I think I believe Bearing Arms just had an update on that case. I was trying to scroll through some of their stuff earlier today. I think Bearing Arms had something, but there's quite a few articles that are floating around out there, and I think there's been some coverage. I think Collier Noir also did some coverage on the Dexter Taylor thing. Matter of fact, I think he actually did pretty good coverage on it, if I remember correctly, and several other YouTubers like Heavy Duty Country and quite a few others. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of content out there. Go check out those guys about more of the backstory. But yeah, it's a travesty, man. So David brings up another point here. I honestly believe that not only will there be boots on the ground, but an actual attack on our homeland. You know, I mean, I think if it does happen, I think the general sentiment is if we see something on our on American soil, that it's going to be something akin to a false flag or some other actor with a vested interest in seeing the United States be successful in Iran. I feel like that's where a lot of the sentiment is right now amongst people who really have been paying attention to this and really been putting time and effort to kind of looked over this. The same, you know, a lot of these people are the same people that have been investing time and energy into paying attention to the Russo-Ukraine war. You know, people like Douglas McGregor, Daniel Davis, Larry Johnson, Ted Postal, John Mearsheimer, and so many other guys. You know, I'm not. I don't know what that would look like. I don't want to say one way or the other, but I'm not sure what that would look like, honestly. But I just don't know that we're going to see something that is actually going to be from the people that they're going to purport it to be. I think we're going to see some pretty nefarious stuff. Let's see. Oh, this is interesting. So this is a very interesting comment here. Research the PNAC agreement. It was instrumental in the Iraq and now the Iran war. Man, isn't it amazing? Isn't it truly amazing how much, you know, so much of the stuff from the Iraq-Afghanistan war, the wars in Syria and Libya, how so much of that has carried over to the Iran situation. You know, it's almost like we don't. It's almost like we don't. We just run the same old textbook, expecting a different result. But yeah, I'm going to take a look into that, and hopefully on Saturday, I can at least kind of go into Saturday, and I'll try and bring that up if I remember. Don't always remember the best, but I'll try. I'll make a notation of it, and hopefully bring that up on Saturday and kind of discuss that if I can. But that's interesting. Yeah, there's a lot of holdover from a lot of these different conflicts, and it shouldn't surprise anybody that we're seeing a lot of the same type of mentality go into this as with a lot of the other wars and conflicts that we've been a part of. So, you know, I'll kind of end it on this. There's a lot of people, I think, also that are very worried about a potential draft if we actually got hot and heavy in Iran. And there was something that just came out recently where the I think it was the Army had raised the enlistment age to 42. The Army raised the enlistment age to 42, and they're giving certain waivers, I believe, including cannabis. They're willing to overlook some stuff as it pertains to cannabis. So, um, man, I mean, I don't know what that's supposed to look like. I don't know what that's trying to say, but to me, it really seems like, oh man, it seems kind of it seems kind of Ukraine-ish, to where they just kept, elevating the enlistment age, or quote unquote the enlistment age, the bussification age, right? Because that's really what it becomes. Is it's like, oh well, 50s, and then now it's 60s, and then now it's, I think it was somewhere like 60, 65 or 67. I could be wrong. I know it was in the 60s for Ukraine. Um, at one point, maybe that all changed, because that changes quite regularly, it seems. But then, there, you used to be able to be like, no, I got a medical thing, I'm a student or whatever, and now you just have people that are trying to leave Ukraine because they realize there is no real waiver, and paying off the guards and the bussifiers. They call them recruiters, that shove people in vans, but the border guards, the bussifiers, it really is getting to a point where you can't even. So, I mean, really, are we taken out of that textbook now, like where we're just going to start raising the age, and then if it gets bad enough, then you're going to have people trying to pay off like whoever it may concern. Man, I just, there's a lot of real concern about this, and not just amongst not just amongst 9 to 5ers and stuff like that, but I mean, there's a lot of veterans that served during the GWAT times. And there's like, absolutely not. Like, you're not taking my kids, you're not taking anybody else's kids, but you're certainly not going to try and press me into this absolute crap show that they've created. And there had been, I believe there was polling that was done a while back also, that did polling from, I think it was amongst Gen Z. It might have been millennials too, but I think it was amongst Gen Z, where there is no interest in war. There's no interest in the military. Support for any of this type of stuff is not there. I mean, these people, to be fair, like Gen Z, and I think millennials feel it a fair bit too, but like, look, Gen Z was and currently is at this point, kind of funneled into this situation. They came through the COVID years in school. They got a horrible education there. I mean, there's some places that have like maybe like a 30% literacy rate in some of these places. And so you're getting just these terrible rates of literacy and the ability to properly function. And then on top of that, the people that do want to find work and go to work and try and buy a house and all of these different things, houses are out of reach, and finding a decent job is very, very difficult for a lot of these people. I don't want to say like it's necessarily impossible, but it's extremely difficult. And I know that you're going to have people that are going to say, oh, well, these kids, they don't like to work. These kids, they don't do anything. To be fair, every generation has said that. And I tend to disagree with the general consensus as it pertains that you have all of these people that don't want to work. I mean, there's some good people from Gen Z, from millennials, Gen Xers, some boomers and stuff like that, right? Like each generation has people that are willing to do things, but we're at a point to where hard work, it really doesn't mean anything anymore. You can go to your job and you can kill yourself for that job, and at a whim, these people will replace you. Your time at your job means nothing. Your education that you went to school for means nothing. Your experience in many cases means absolutely nothing. So we are in a situation to where we have this weird situation to where it's hard to find work. If you find work, you're not guaranteed to even have a fighting chance, even if you bring experience, you bring good work ethic, or whatever the case is. And I'm not saying there should be a guarantee, but there's this situation to where it's like, you could be going there giving everything you have and you're still let go. It becomes a situation too to where I think, yes, there is an issue with applicants. I think you have people that are lazy to some degree. I think you have people that don't want to work. I think you're always going to have that, but there is a serious issue. And so not only are you seeing situations where Gen Z in many ways really doesn't have much of a fighting chance, but these are also going to be the people that they're going to want to go after first, I think, for like the draft. These are people that they're trying really hard to get into the military right now. They're trying to offer them nice little sweetheart deals to where it's like, oh, we'll give you this bonus. I even remember the recruiters talking about the bonus all the time when I was going through school. Like, we'll give you all this bonus, and then and there's just not the sentiment there. So when we look at, I think the fears of like a draft, or the fears of an escalation with Iran, or maybe it's not even just maybe it's not even Iran, right? Or it's somebody else, but these are legitimate fears. And so when you look at the people that they're going to, that they would go after first, and you don't have popular support amongst it, I mean, what does that look like? And when you have a demographic of, when you look at who really helps comprise a good portion of the anti-war movement, and you have a lot of veterans that are a part of that. I happen to know a few different veterans, and that had seen combat, and they're about as anti-war as it gets. They don't like the idea of sending, their mothers, brothers, fathers, sons, their children, their aunts, nephews, nieces, uncles, whatever, into ridiculous, illegitimate wars. And so I don't think the sentiment's there. Now, look, I'm not saying that there would be like full-on rebellion. I'm sure that you would have people that would be more than willing to go and toe that line, but I think you would have a pretty stiff demographic of people in the U.S. if the escalation got to a point to where they started just trying to truck people off. So with that being said, thank you, each and every one of you, for stopping by the Sentinels of Liberty podcast this evening. I hope you're able to find some of this informative. I hope you were able to kind of get a sense of at least where I think things are going. And I know that I'm not alone. There's a lot of other people that maybe are a little bit more eloquent and phrase things a little bit better than me, but I'm just trying to bring you as much of the truth and the facts, and do it with a realm of liberty to the best of my ability. So I hope you're able to get that. I do have another show. My regular show is on Saturdays at 1700, which is 5 p.m. and that's at Central Time. So I hope to see you all back here on the Sentinels of Liberty to hear the subjects and the issues and all of the calamity and chaos that we have to talk about. I do this every week, so it's great to have you here. Thank you once again for your support. Like, share, subscribe, send it to people who you think might actually get something out of this, that are kind of looking for content like this. And I will see you all on the next one. Thank you very much.